Well, hello everyone. Hope everyone's having a good Wednesday, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to uh, come out and log in and learn a little bit about composable analytics and how it can be applied to some of your existing systems and really help out in some of your data strategies. So before I kind of jump into what some of the capabilities are of composable analytics, I'd like to just give a little bit of a background. Uh, so composable analytics is an MIT-based spinoff. It was initially created at the MIT Lincoln Laboratory, and it was really developed to handle a lot of the integration needs between disparate systems and communities as well, right? So it's not just kind of a system integrator, but it's a people integrator as well. And the idea is to have kind of a common environment where people can collaborate on analytics to leverage other people's work, other people's methods, um, and other people's aggregated views and data as well. Um, and so, in environments where it's just too tough to bring all the data together, maybe because it's just too large, it's just too ugly and nasty, and really the owners of the data have all of the domain knowledge of that, and so it kind of makes sense to them to control that, or maybe for legal reasons. But the idea is to have this environment where folks can contribute analytics and people can share them. Um, and by doing that, we're really getting a tenfold increase in terms of what we can do with our data by having this collaborative environment. Um, and in terms of use cases of the actual software, we really want to span the gamut. So we didn't want just one tool for visualizations or one tool for extraction or one tool for querying. Really, with composable analytics, it spans the gamut where you can fuse data, you can query for data, you can create views on top of data and share that out. And you're really never stuck. You're never in a position where you have to step out, do some offline analysis, and then bring something in. It's a system where you can fully automate your data processes. So in terms of cloud offerings, so we have a cloud-based solution. We have a demo out there that you can play around with to kind of get a feel for some of the capabilities. Not all the capabilities are enabled on that demo site, but hopefully you can get an idea of what it can do. We also support on-premise, so it can be hosted behind your firewalls or in your own cloud. You can even just install it on a single desktop if you're doing some development work, or you can scale it out across multiple servers as well. It is an open system, so you're free to add modules or applications, modify it as you will. But we do support consulting services, so if you want some modules or applications developed, we can help you out there. So what is composable analytics in a nutshell? Well, it's essentially this web-based environment that allows users, whether they're business analysts, IT professionals, developers, stakeholders, to explore, create, and collaborate on their analytical methods and reporting applications. So these applications are essentially these flow-based programs that allow people to query and fetch your information from a wide variety of different information sources, whether it's relational databases, Hadoop clusters, spreadsheets, web services, aggregate, filter, mash that data up, and produce results. And results might be in the form of tabular data. It might be maps or plots. It might be JSON or XML blobs that you're sending to another system, or maybe you're sending an email to someone. And and really by having a platform that allows folks to create these methods, we're consolidating this report generation within the enterprise. We're avoiding duplication within large organizations, but also in disparate communities. And we're reducing error-prone tasks that happen, when people are grabbing data here to there manually and mashing it up in Excel. And so why should folks really use Composable Analytics? Well, with this platform, you can actually develop the reports and the methods which are actually being requested. Right? These are the really nasty ones that you've got to do some serious filtering on your data. The joins are not as simple as just a unique integer between two tables. This is where you need to do some serious complex data manipulation to get some results. So at a high level, the system provides three main features to its users. The first is exploration. This is the ability for folks to go and find other groups or other individuals that have common interests. Maybe some analysts are working on the same data sets, or they're using the same regression algorithms. So it's a way to connect. But you can also leverage and find other people's applications within the system as well. And you can take an application that someone else has created, you can modify it to suit your needs. Maybe you need to do some more filtering, maybe you need to change the visualization, maybe you want to actually baseline your data a little differently. You can modify those apps. Or you can create one from scratch, and you do that through the designer that we have. And then the third, which is probably the most important, is collaboration. So this is the ability to share out your results, share out your methods so that other people can reap the benefits. So at its core, Composable Analytics, you can think of it as a generic data and process integration platform, but it has an end-user composite application development experience built on top. So you don't have to be a hardcore developer, you don't have to be a data scientist whiz to get things done within the environment. It supports dashboarding and information sharing, exploration, discovery of these methods and data. And like any good system, it has user and fine-grained access control mechanisms on the data and the apps. And in terms of kind of really target customers for Composable Analytics, I've lumped them into kind of three buckets here, but there's probably many more here. On the right we have web automation. So this is kind of looking at use cases that are mashing up online services like Facebook and Dropbox and things like that. You can start to develop applications that are integrating those things, right? So let's say you want to basically archive maybe any of the tagged photos in Facebook to SkyDrive or something like that. That's something that you could do. In terms of use cases within the scientific community, right? Integrating with Hadoop, integrating with parallel computing clusters, stringing together MapReduce jobs. Those are things that you can do in Composable Analytics. In terms of IT operations, right? There's a lot of machine-generated data out there, and so you can create apps to index logs, develop key performance indicator dashboards on that information. And in terms of the business intelligence side of things, I'm kind of lumping a lot of verticals in here, whether it's health-related or finance. There's the ability to create cost-cut reports and analysis, using many different web services or relational databases. And so at Composable Analytics, we really believe that business insight begins with a platform that supports this cross-cutting data analysis, report generation, and method sharing, right? It can't just be, a single data scientist sitting in Tableau, figuring out all the issues or all the insight in your data, right? It's got to be kind of a group effort here. But, we still kind of live in this siloed information age, right? If we look at kind of just within an organization, right, you might have different departments and they're using different systems, but for good reason. right? Because they're all doing different things, whether it's marketing or sales, accounting. But when you want to answer kind of these cross-cutting questions, you've got to have some sort of distributed data and query integration happening to answer those problems. And we want to avoid kind of the tedious and error-prone tasks that a lot of us do day in and day out. Within large organizations, composable analytics can really remove a lot of the duplication of reports that are occurring. And composable analytics is kind of a self-service tool, so it's really putting the power into the hands of the end users, because we do realize that access to developers and just a reliance on teams can be problematic. So for a lot of the things, whether it's queries or integrating new data sets or creating new visualizations, we want to really allow the end user to do that. If we were to look at a use case a little bit deeper, let's pretend for a moment we're an analyst within a company that's building, say, websites for other organizations or other individuals, and our company might be composed of many different departments. They're using many different information systems, and really kind of the data is all over the place, right? You might have some data in the cloud, whether it's on Google AdWords or Salesforce, and you might have some data on premise, whether it's some of your accounting data. And so when you have questions, cross-cutting questions like, are the sales guys, are they actually selling, our websites to the folks that we're marketing to, and are the folks that we sold, our websites to, are they actually using it? Can we look at some login stats? And so just kind of simple questions like that require some pretty serious data integration. I'm sure, some folks in the audience are probably looking at this and saying, oh, well, I already have a solution for this, right? We'll basically, just create adapters to each of these systems. We'll siphon off the data, create into a separate data warehouse or database, and then we'll create a query interface on top of that, and we'll be good to go. And that will work, right? That's what happens typically, but there's always these question marks, right? There's always these additional data sets that our analysts need, whether it's, maybe you want to actually look at Twitter trends and compare that with what your customers are doing, or maybe you need to bring in some labor statistics or census data, right? It's there's always additional data sets that you need to bring in, but by trying to store it into kind of one central data warehouse or just kind of data storage area, has its issues, right? And just in terms of space, but maintenance and things like that. And so, what's kind of the secret sauce in composable analytics? Well, it's really the execution engine, and people can author analytics using the designer, and they basically consist of these modules. They're basically just functions. They have inputs and outputs, and people string them together, so they can be querying triple stores for data or relational databases. They can be calling MATLAB code. They can bring Excel spreadsheets. Really, they can do anything, and so the system is infinitely configurable. The other thing to note is that there is no monolithic data model within composable analytics, so really you're strictly querying and grabbing data for the problem at hand, for the problem that application is solving, whether it's aggregating data, creating counts for diseases over time, or maybe it's looking at sales projections or something like that. And the other kind of competitive advantage to other solutions out there is this marketplace for analytics, right? This ability for folks to grab and reuse, whether it's a wrapped data set or it's an actual regression algorithm that someone else has developed, and you can very, very easily use it. So within the environment, there's kind of these five core entities that people interact in. So the first is users, right? So users, go to the system, they create, reuse, and run applications. Applications produce results, and results might be posted to boards, or they might be sent to another system or another person. And then other people can go and view and edit those boards. And boards are a great way for people to organize lots of results together to create a cohesive view that you want to present to people. We also have groups, and groups are a great way to manage access control. And so you can have fine-grained access control on the various entities. So you might only want certain people to execute an application or read it or write it. The same thing with boards. Maybe you only want certain people to be able to write to it or view results. So right now we're seeing kind of three main categories of users within Composable Analytics right now. The biggest is just kind of these casual users that go to the system, they check out some boards, get up to date about what's going on at a high level. They might run an application here or there to get some real-time results. And then we have these more sophisticated users that are actually going out, they're taking someone else's app, they're modifying it to suit their needs, and they're also creating new apps from scratch. And then we have a smaller community of developers that are creating what we call kind of these first-class modules that and visualizations that are kind of the atomic building blocks of applications. And these are really feeding and increasing the number of use cases and scenarios and applications that can be developed within Composable Analytics. Let me switch gears a little bit and talk about how Composable Analytics can be applied to some existing systems and system approaches that are going on here. So here I've kind of depicted kind of a canonical example of how people collect data and produce kind of these overarching views on that, right? So you might have various data sources up on top. You might have some sort of ETL layer that's extracting that data, transforming, doing some cleansing, and then dumping it into the data warehouse, right? And this warehouse might be, might just be a relational database. It might be an HDFS. Might be, some triple stores. And then kind of on the other side of that, you've got other people developing queries, creating reports and visualizations on top of that data that's sitting in the warehouse. And Composable Analytics can operate in this environment very well, right? So you can actually develop applications sitting on top of data sources that are creating basically views of data, right? They might be web services that folks can develop that can then be consumed by other systems. You can create ETL apps that are filtering and cleansing and inserting data into a data warehouse. And you can also create some apps that are just doing kind of the querying and visualization aspects as well. And so there's some pros to kind of using this approach, right? There's this nice single place to query your data. The data is typically considered clean, and there's a well-vetted schema in there. But there's also some cons here, right? One is duplication of the data, right? So you're always having to synchronize data within those data sources to your data warehouse. So there is a little bit of a staleness there. And there's always issues trying to add more data into your data warehouse. If you want to get a new feed, it can be pretty costly. And so, to avoid that, what a lot of folks do is if they need a new data source, well, typically a lot of the reporting in query systems out there on top of the data warehouse don't allow that, so that they end up dumping data out, right? Dumping it out and then doing the fusion offline. Another approach that we see out there, and this is kind of flipped. It's kind of almost like the opposite of that previous approach, but this is where the data is actually going to stay within the source systems, okay? And to do kind of the joining, you can actually query or cherry pick for just the amount of data that you actually need to solve the problem. So if you want, let's say you want to look at information about a particular patient, you might send, you might query multiple systems to get information about that particular patient. Or maybe you're wanting to compare certain diseases and look at aggregated counts over time. So you might query one system for some counts and another system for another, and do what we call kind of a quick join, right? So this is, you're actually joining the data as you're grabbing it. And there's a lot of pros to this. One is, there's no duplication of data, so you're getting real-time answers. So anytime you're reproducing the visualization, refreshing it, or running this join query, you're going out to the real data. Other things that are nice is that the census data can actually only can just be on those source systems, right? It doesn't actually have to leave those systems if you're doing kind of the aggregated queries on those systems, and you're only producing rolled up counts or something like that, which is pretty nice. But there's some negatives here too, right? Like not all joins can be quick. And so when you start, if you're needing to do a join that's, over, several 100,000 records, then you're probably going to need an intermediate database to put that in to do the joining. And other things too, right? Not all these data sources actually provide query interfaces. So in that case, you do actually have to put it, someplace that will support those queries. And also those data sources need to be scalable as well to handle the load. And so this is kind of a combined approach that you can do with Composable Analytics. That's combining those two that I just showed you, where you might have a large data repository or warehouse that's bringing in massive swaths of data from many different sources. But you can still be agile, right? And you can still bring in, say, data source Y and do the joining there through an integration app within Composable Analytics. And you can also, develop apps that are saving data to kind of a temporary storage to do the querying if that data source doesn't provide those query interfaces. So Twitter's a great example of that. So let me go ahead and jump into the demo now. So hopefully all you guys can kind of see my browser. So this is kind of a main dashboard that people see when they are first log into the system. It's basically a quick way to get at the various entities, whether it's apps or boards or groups. Maybe you want to look at what are kind of the latest applications that have been added to the system. So here you can see that I just added an application to grab some population data by ages. This is a way we also have a discover feature, so there's a way for people to find other individuals or find results or applications within the system. And there's various filtering parameters here. but so you can kind of, filter by app. So if I'm only interested in finding an app, I can do that. And here you can see that you're presented with kind of these thumbnails of the applications and the names of them. And so just kind of looking at the names of the applications, you can kind of start to see that the use cases are very, very broad, right? We've got, some more personal ones that are, going out to, RSS feeds and looking at weather data and, periodically emailing you if there's showers in the forecast. And then we've got, other ones that are looking at, syndromic data, emergency hospital data, comparing, disease counts and producing charts. We got other ones looking at ProMed data, so mashing, online data with more internal data. We've got other ones that are trolling Craigslist for stuff to buy. The use cases are very, very broad. Let me show you guys a board. See what you can do with that. So this is a board that an organization might develop to maybe disseminate information, whether it's out to the public or maybe it's to neighboring jurisdictions, or maybe it's just within an actual organization and you want to just notify another department. In this one, for example, we're actually looking at some disease-related data. So we're looking at disease counts over time and by geographic region, but this could also be sales figures, for example. And as people look at this data, one of the questions that they may have is, where did this data come from? How was it mashed up? What are the sources of the data? And so they can actually look at the application that have developed and have produced this result. So here we're at the landing page of the application, so we can see, who's been running the app, who's been modifying and updating the app. You have various operations that you can do here, access control. You can run the app. You can look at previous runs. Here we can crack it open in the designer to really see what's going on in this application. So an application, as I said before, it basically consists of these modules. So modules are building blocks. They basically, it's just a function that has inputs on the left and outputs on the right, and in the middle it does something to them. So this one's actually running on a timer, so it's going to periodically run this app, so applications can call other applications, and then it's this one's publishing those results to that board that I had showed you before. Let me go ahead and drill down to one more app, and I'll show you how you can kind of run one. So this application, it's basically taking in a few inputs. So it's taking in, a disease, geographic location, and a date range, running a query, and then aggregating that data by county, and then producing a heat map. And one of the nice features within Composable Analytics is that you can really see the intermediate results of all these modules. Let me go ahead and create an application just to kind of give you guys a feel of how easy it is to really author one of these. So let's say we've got some data sitting in a database, and here we've got some simulated emergency hospital data. Well, let's say we want to just do a simple query on it. So we're gonna use this ODBC query module, and we're gonna run a query on the data, and we're gonna look at age, and we're gonna look at the number of visits to the hospitals for that age group. And you see that it was very, very quick. We have over 1 million records there, and we got our results back. So let's say we want to actually plot that data and disseminate that. So I'm going to use the line chart module. I'm going to take that table and I'm going to pipe it in here. You can see that as I do that, table is kind of glowing here, and that's because inputs and outputs are strongly typed. So you can't just kind of connect things willy-nilly. On this, we're going to want to plot age on the X column. And this one's a little unique because it actually can take in a list of series, so it can actually plot multiple lines. And we'll plot the number of visits. We'll just call it number of sick. So we run that. Here we've got our graph. You see that actually the number of visits is going down here. So by looking at that, we might actually want to baseline our data, right? So let's say we want to baseline our data by population. We can find an app maybe that supports that. And here's one that I've created just yesterday that takes in an input. It's basically a state name, and it's going to produce a table with the population by single ages. So if I was to run that, I can see for each age, I've got the population, and we can take a look at what that application is doing. And so we can see that it's actually going out to the census website and grabbing data, and then taking the location and really just filtering down for that particular location and outputting that table. And so by doing that, we've provided a very easy way for folks to leverage that. So we're going to take that data and we need to scale the number of visits. So we're going to use the table scaler module, and I'm going to pipe in these two tables. The value column is going to be visits, and I need to join those two tables by the age column. And we'll do the inverse because we want to do kind of the division. And if I was to run that, you can see that now we have basically the number of visits divided by the population here. And so rather than using that table, I'm going to use this table here, and I'm going to plot the baseline column here. And so here we go. Here we've got another plot, and we can actually see that the number's going up, as people get older here. So let's say that we want to send that out to some folks. We can use we can take that chart and we'll convert it to a JPEG, all right? And then we'll use the mail sender module, and we'll take that JPEG and we'll add it as an attachment. And I'll just go ahead and email it to myself. So if I was to go ahead and check my email, here we go. And here you can kind of see, here's the image, that's an attachment. And we can do other things too, right? So, we could even post this thing to Facebook if we wanted to, right? So we can take that image, put in photos, and another option that you can do is you can parallelize the execution of your applications. So if we look here, these two modules can actually be executed asynchronously from each other. And the sending of the email and the posting to Facebook can also be executed asynchronously from one another. And so you very, very easily get a tremendous savings in terms of execution time. So here, just to go to Facebook, here we can see the chart. Let me show you a few other applications within the environment here. One kind of cool module that we've developed is the Twitter search. So here you can search Twitter by, say, keyword, but you can also choose a geographic region to limit your area. So if we were only interested, say, in the New York area, let's try that again. You can just set a radius around New York and run that, and really very quickly get at some Twitter data. And so this is very, very raw data, and so you might actually want to filter that some more, or actually put it in a database so that you can perform aggregated queries on it, because Twitter's only allowing you to get at the raw tweets. It's not really there to support aggregated views or trends. So you can actually start to develop some applications that save those tweets. So here's an example of an app that's searching Twitter for kind of a keyword, business intelligence. It's only looking in kind of the Boston area, and it's then using an insert module to insert those tweets into a database. And this stuff down here, it's basically this is really there to store the sync ID. So you always want to get new tweets. You don't want to get the old ones, and so you have to basically pipe in the sync ID into your query, so you're getting all the tweets since that particular ID. But one thing that's kind of cool that this one's showcasing is that you can actually begin to add custom code, if you need to support some capabilities. So this one, for example, is trying to get the maximum ID out of that table, and so you're never really stuck in a situation where you can't do anything, right? If there's a module that doesn't support that capability, you might be able to write one using the code module, and it could be MATLAB code, it could be C# code, it could be F#, whatever you want. And so this one's basically storing those tweets into a database. And then we can have other apps that are querying that database. So this one, for example, is querying that database, just doing an aggregated view by date. So here we can see the number of tweets within the Boston area with the keyword business intelligence. And so there's a lot of focus right now on Twitter data, where people are trying to just grab all of the tweets, but in reality, you can actually be smarter about it and really just focus on a certain area or certain keywords, and just save a smaller wedge of that data. And so one, you get a tremendous savings in terms of just disk space, but just in terms of the management of that is really helpful as well. Let's take a look at a web service application. So here's an example of an application that's actually a web service. So people within the system can actually begin to develop their own web services by wrapping functionality in a web receive and a web send module. This one's basically taking some parameters off the URI that's getting fed in, running a query and producing some JSON data. So here we can basically hit that endpoint that application is listening on and get back kind of this machine readable JSON data that can be consumed by another system. So it's a great way to create parameterized views of your data. Let me show you a few more applications, and then I think we'll turn it over to some questions. So here's an application that's going out. It's actually using some web services provided by Tyco, which is out of the University of Pittsburgh, that has a lot of MMWR data. And here you can see that you don't need to be in the designer to run applications. You can sit outside and you can set the various parameters and just simply look at the results coming out of that application. So this application is actually looking at disease counts. This one we've set it to Lyme disease. We've got two outputs. One is a more baseline one of the counts versus the non-baseline here. Let's see what else. Here's an interesting app that's looking at health map data. So health map is a service that basically provides feeds about what diseases are happening around different geographic areas. And this one, we're actually using that data to influence how we want to look at our local data. So we're basically going out, querying health map for some disease-related data. So here we've got some cases of E. coli, West Nile virus, rabies, and we're taking that. We're actually building up a conditional where clause based on that information, and running against our own, say, syndromic data. And by doing that, we can provide kind of this dynamic view of your data based on what's going on in neighboring geographic areas. Let's show you one more application. Here's an example application that's exporting just a spreadsheet. So it's actually going out to a database, doing some aggregation, and producing a spreadsheet that could then be, opened up in, say, Excel, for example. And so there, maybe you've got some some existing macros or something like that that you want to run on this data. So with that, I think I'll hand it over to questions, see if anybody has any questions here. Let's see. One person is asking, can you limit small numbers from being exposed? And so I think maybe what they're kind of alluding to is if we're looking at disease-related data, and maybe if the number is so small that it might provide some personal information that you don't want to actually disclose. And yes, absolutely, right. So you could create a filter. Once you've aggregated the data, you could simply add another module to filter out numbers that are too small, and that filter might be just simply based on the number. It might be the number in the geographic region, or maybe it's the number in the population, or that condition is very, very configurable, right? And you can create an app to do that. So we've got another question that says, is it easy to merge data in, for instance, a map view, like maybe number of cases of something overlaid with hospitals and bed availability, vaccine, antiviral tracking, etc.? Yeah, great question. One thing I didn't show was is that we actually have a KMZ module, which takes in a list. It takes in a list of KMLs, and so you could create an app, for example, that maybe is producing one of those chloropleth KML layers, and you could pipe it in here. You could have another layer that maybe is simply just push pins. That's looking at hospital locations or something like that, and then the output is that KMZ file. It's that rolled up aggregated view, and then you can just simply open that up in Google Earth or email it out to someone or what have you. Is there a test version of Composable Analytics that people can try out available on the web? There is. So if you go to composableanalytics.com and there's a try it button, just click on that and just create an account, and you'll be able to check out all these applications that I just demoed for you today. And with that, I'll okay, we got one more. So do you have to rely on built-in visualization tools, or use ArcGIS or other GIS mapping tool? Good question. So right now, it's really module dependent. So, for example, we have some KML and KMZ modules that we've developed. So those rely on Google Earth in terms of the Google Earth plugin for its visualizations. But you could plug in something else. So, for example, that Twitter search for capability, for example, choosing the region. This is not using Google Earth. This is actually using Esri's capabilities, and so really you can really use any mapping capability that you want. It's just however the module was developed is what some of those those capabilities are going to be. All right, with that, I think we'll close it. But feel free to email me if you guys have any more questions. Here's my email address. And hopefully you guys have a good rest of the week. All right, take care.